Many people want us to believe that Africa is poor because of religion. They go to great lengths to push this narrative, repeating it in conversations, media, and even academic spaces. But let's stop and ask, is that really true? If religion were truly the reason for poverty, then explain this. The USA and Germany, both Christian majority countries, are among the richest nations in the world. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both Muslim majority, are also incredibly wealthy. Japan and China, largely secular or non-religious, are global economic powerhouses too. So clearly, wealth is not about religion. It's about something else entirely. And here's the truth. Wealth comes from productivity, strong institutions, strategic investment, innovation, and good governance, not belief systems. So what really causes poverty in Africa? In 1904, in what is now Namibia, German colonial forces launched a violent crackdown on the Herero and Nama tribes. The reason? Resistance to land seizure and exploitation by the German settlers. The result? One of the first genocides of the 20th century. Over 80% of the Herero and 50% of the Nama people were exterminated between 1904 and 1908. Survivors were driven into the Namib Desert, left to die of starvation and thirst. Those captured were sent to concentration camps, used as forced labor for Germany's growing mining empire, including early partnerships with D. These diamonds were extracted. Wealth flowed to Europe, but infrastructure, schools, or hospitals for locals, almost none. This legacy of extractive development where resources were taken and nothing was built too, left deep scars. Also from 1885 to 1908, King Leopold II of Belgium ruled the Congo Free State as his personal property, not a Belgian colony, but a private enterprise. To meet the growing demand for rubber, Leopold's agents imposed brutal quotas. Villages that failed were punished with massacres. Children's hands were chopped off as proof of execution. The death toll estimates range from 8 to 10 million Congolese lives lost. While Belgium prospered, Congo was left institutionally empty. No schools, no universities, no national identity, just trauma and poverty. These colonial scars still shape Africa today. The wealth of Namibia and Congo is still tied to raw resource exports. Their people still suffer from infrastructure gaps, weak institutions, and divided societies rooted in how Europe once saw Africa, not as home to nations, but as a mind to be emptied. If we're going to talk about poverty in Africa, we must first talk about what was taken and what was never given back. When we talk about Africa's poverty, one of the most painful, yet critical, causes is weak governance and corruption. It's not always the lack of resources. It's what happens after the resources come in. Let's take Ghana, for example. In a country facing economic hardship, $58 million meant to fund a national cathedral reportedly went unaccounted for. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was so serious that in June 2025, an Interpol red notice was issued for Ghana's former finance minister, Keno Foriata. Imagine that. The very person meant to protect the national treasury accused of misusing it for a personal or political. Now let's move to Comoros, a tiny island nation, but with a story that echoes across the continent. Leaders sold citizenship to foreigners in a passport for sale scheme. Over $260 million, nearly 40% of the country's entire GDP, disappear into private accounts. This is not just a scandal. It's economic sabotage. That money could have built roads, schools, hospitals, but it went into the pockets of a few. This is the heart of Africa's struggle. Corruption at the top that bleeds countries dry from within. It creates ghost schools and unfinished hospitals, unpaid teachers and underfunded clinics, roads that are promised but never paved. And worst of all, it kills trust, the very foundation needed for democracy, growth and stability, if Africa is to rise. It must first clean house, from the halls of Parliament to the smallest district office. Good governance isn't optional. It's the fuel of true development. Africa, a continent often characterized by its vibrant cultures and immense potential, yet, for decades, its development has been tragically held back by a powerful, destructive force, political instability and conflict. This isn't just about headlines. It's about the relentless erosion of progress, the destruction of lives, and the perpetuation of poverty. Conflict isn't merely a distraction from development. It actively dismantles it. It shatters social cohesion, destroys physical infrastructure, and redirects precious resources away from building a future, plunging millions deeper into destitution. Let's look at some devastating examples. In 1994, Rwanda experienced one of the most horrific genocides in modern history. In just 100 days, nearly 1 million people were systematically murdered. Beyond the unfathomable death toll, millions were displaced, creating a refugee crisis that destabilized the entire Great Lakes region, a generation's worth of human capital. Doctors, teachers, farmers was decimated or traumatized, leading to immense social and psychological burdens. The genocide brought the economy to a standstill. Infrastructure was destroyed, farmlands abandoned, businesses looted, and public services collapsed. The very fabric of economic activity was torn apart. While Rwanda has made remarkable strides in recovery and economic growth since, the genocide left deep, persistent scars of poverty, particularly in rural areas, and continues to impact social cohesion and long-term development. The immense resources spent on rebuilding could have been used for accelerating prosperity. Somalia's decades-long civil war, beginning in 1991, offers another tragic illustration of instability's grip on poverty. The collapse of the central government led to prolonged conflict, clan warfare, and the rise of extremist groups like Al-Shabaab. Without a stable central authority, the state's ability to provide basic services, enforce laws, or protect property vanished. This created a vacuum exploited by armed groups. Essential infrastructure like roads, ports, and power grids were destroyed or fell into disrepair. Trade routes became perilous, and investment, both foreign and domestic, dried up. The economy fragmented into localized, often illicit, activities. Recurring famine, exacerbated by conflict and climate change, has led to chronic food insecurity, mass displacement, and a dependence on international aid. The inability to address these crises stems directly from the ongoing political instability. Like the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country incredibly rich in minerals like cobalt and coltan, presents a complex case where political instability and conflict are intertwined with a resource curve. Since the late 1990s, Eastern DRC has been plagued by overlapping conflicts involving numerous armed groups, often fueled by control over mineral resources. Millions have died from violence, disease, and starvation, and millions more are internally displaced, living in constant fear and dire poverty. Despite its immense mineral wealth, the conflict prevents proper governance, transparent resource management, and investment in sustainable industries instead. Revenues are often diverted to militias or corrupt elites, leaving the majority of the population impoverished. Roads, healthcare, and education infrastructure remain severely underdeveloped. The conflict deters legitimate investment, trapping communities in cycles of artisanal mining, where the risks are high and benefits minimal. In all these cases, political instability and conflict don't just interrupt development, they reverse it. They destroy physical and human capital, divert resources, deter investment, and create environments where corruption thrives. They erode trust in institutions and make long-term planning impossible. For Africa to truly overcome poverty, addressing the root causes and cycles of political instability and conflict is not just a humanitarian imperative, it's an economic necessity. Only through lasting peace and stable governance can the continent unlock its immense potential and build a prosperous future for all its people. Economic traps fueling poverty in Africa. Beyond the legacy of colonialism, many African nations grapple with an economic structure that locks them into a cycle of vulnerability. This is the challenge of global imbalances, where the continent's immense resources often become more of a curse than a blessing. Many African economies are heavily reliant on exporting raw materials, oil, gold, timber, agricultural produce. While this generates revenue, it comes with a high price, extreme vulnerability to volatile global markets, and a critical lack of diversified, value-added industries. Take Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and a major oil producer. Around 80% of its exports are crude oil. You'd think this wealth would eradicate poverty. Yet, despite its vast oil reserves, nearly 40% of Nigerians live in extreme poverty. How? The nation's economy is highly susceptible to the unpredictable swings of global oil prices. When prices drop, national revenue plummets, impacting government spending on essential services. More critically, Nigeria largely exports raw crude. Most of the refining, processing, and manufacturing of petroleum products happens elsewhere, meaning valuable jobs and industrial growth are lost. The wealth flows out, limiting the creation of stable, diverse industries and perpetuating dependency. Now, let's look at Mali, one of Africa's top gold producers. This precious metal accounts for a significant portion of its economy. The challenge here is similar. Around 60% of Mali's gold is exported raw, primarily to refining hubs like South Africa and Switzerland. While the extraction generates revenue, the real value addition, the refining, manufacturing of jewelry, or advanced electronics, occurs outside Mali. This means the country misses out on crucial opportunities for industrial development, skilled job creation, and broader economic benefits that come from processing its own resources. The profits might be recorded, but the transformative economic impact for its citizens remains tragically limited. These examples highlight a broader pattern. African nations often operate at the bottom of global value chains. They sell low-value raw materials and import high-value finished goods. This structure makes them perpetually dependent and vulnerable. It's a systemic issue, rooted in historical patterns but reinforced by current global economic dynamics that often favor industrialized nations. To truly unlock Africa's potential and combat poverty, addressing this structural imbalance is key. It requires investment in local industrialization, diversification, and fair trade practices that allow African nations to process their own wealth for the benefit of their own people. The infrastructure trap, a colonial blueprint for underdevelopment. For development to flourish, a nation needs strong foundations, but across much of Africa, the very infrastructure intended to connect and build economies was designed with a fundamentally different purpose, leaving a legacy of inadequacy. During the colonial era, infrastructure development was rarely about national integration or empowering local economies. Instead, it was a precise, calculated strategy for extraction. Railways, roads, and ports were built for one primary purpose: to serve as efficient channels for funding raw materials, minerals, timber, cash crops from the interior directly to coastal ports. ready for shipment back to the colonial powers. This export-oriented design meant vast swathes of inland Africa and regions not involved in cash crop production were largely ignored. Their development was irrelevant to colonial objectives. Railways didn't connect major domestic population centers. They connected mines to the sea. Roads didn't foster internal trade networks. They facilitated the outbound flow of resources. Essential services like hospitals, schools, and markets in neglected areas remained inaccessible or underdeveloped. The consequences of this colonial blueprint persist today. Many African nations inherited fractured infrastructure networks, ill-suited for fostering internal trade, industrialization, or equitable national development. It means high transportation costs for internal goods, limited access to markets for farmers, challenges in delivering social services, and difficulties in attracting diverse investments. Even today, despite significant efforts, many regions remain isolated, struggling to connect to the national and global economy. Overcoming this inherited hurdle requires massive investment in integrated infrastructure designed for Africa's own development goals, connecting its people, fostering internal trade, and building resilient economies for the future. The untapped potential holds back African science and technology. For nations to thrive in the 21st century, advancements in science and technology are paramount. Yet, for many parts of Africa, the very foundations for innovation, robust infrastructure, remain a persistent challenge rooted in a colonial past. Colonial powers engineered infrastructure for their own benefit. Railways and ports were built to extract raw materials, creating efficient channels from mines and plantations to global markets. This meant investment was concentrated, leaving vast inland regions undeveloped. The goal wasn't to build interconnected economies or foster widespread societal progress, but to facilitate one-way resource flow. This narrow, extractive infrastructure had a profound, often overlooked, impact on science and technology. Without interconnected roads, reliable power grids, or broad communication networks, developing robust educational institutions, advanced research facilities, or innovation hubs across the continent was inherently stifled. How could scientific knowledge spread efficiently? How could researchers collaborate effectively if travel was arduous and information flow limited? The colonial blueprint inadvertently created an anti-development environment for indigenous S&T growth, limiting access to tools, knowledge, and talent. This historical pattern still casts a long shadow on Africa's scientific and technological ambitions today. Reliable power. Erratic electricity supply hinders sensitive laboratory equipment, disrupts computing, and slows down data processing. Digital connectivity, limited internet access in many regions, prevents researchers from accessing global scientific databases, collaborating internationally, or participating in real-time online learning. Logistics and cost, transporting delicate scientific equipment, chemicals, or specialized components across vast distances with poor road networks is often prohibitively expensive and risky. Brain drain, a lack of cutting-edge research facilities, coupled with connectivity issues and limited local opportunities, unfortunately contributes to skilled scientists and engineers seeking opportunities abroad. To truly unlock Africa's vast scientific and technological potential, investment must go beyond mere resource export. It demands integrated, modern infrastructure that connects minds, powers innovation, and facilitates a free flow of knowledge across the continent. Building these foundational elements is not just about economic growth. It's about empowering the next generation of African scientists, engineers, and innovators to solve local and global challenges. Conclusion: is religion the cause of Africa's poverty? Let's get real. Having examined the multifaceted realities behind Africa's poverty, It becomes unequivocally clear that attributing this complex challenge primarily to religion is a profound oversimplification and Inger's misdiagnosis. While faith deeply influences daily life across the continent, it is not the fundamental engine of economic hardship. Instead, the true architects of Africa's persistent poverty are deeply rooted in a tapestry of interconnected factors, the exploitative legacy of colonialism that extracted wealth and drew arbitrary bow. Others, the ongoing struggles with weak governance and corruption that divert essential resources. The devastating cycles of political instability and conflict that decimate infrastructure and displace populations. The inherent vulnerabilities of an extractive economic structure reliant on commodity exports. And the pervasive challenge of inadequate infrastructure that stifles connectivity and development. Religion, in its myriad forms, plays a nuanced role within African societies, often serving as a powerful force for social cohesion, community support, charity, and resilience in the face of adversity. While, like any human institution, it can occasionally be manipulated for personal gain or contribute to conflict in specific contexts, these instances are symptoms of deeper political, economic, or social grievances, rather than religion being the root cause of systemic poverty. To get real about Africa's poverty means moving beyond simplistic scapegoating and focusing on actionable solutions. It necessitates confronting the enduring impacts of historical injustices, fostering genuinely inclusive and accountable governance, building robust and diversified economies, investing massively in modern, integrated infrastructure, and actively working towards peace and stability. Only by addressing these foundational drivers can Africa truly unlock its immense potential and forge a path towards sustainable prosperity for all its people.